Hello, welcome to my channel. We're ready to start the Yankee Doodle folio that I'm going to make. This is a collection by Echo Park, and the cover is going to be a somewhat of a trifold. It's going to be like a regular album, but it will have a 3-inch flap on the front that you can use also for pockets or whatever. But let's go ahead and get started. I just wanted you to see the collection that I'll be working with. Here's an example of some cute paper that we'll be using. So what you're going to need for the chipboard, I'm using 2 pieces that are 6 by 8. That's for the front and back. One that's 1 7/8 by 8. That will be a left-hand spine piece. One that is 2 by 8, so it's just a little bit larger. That's going to be the right-hand side spine. And then there's a piece that's 3 by 8. That's going to be a flap that's going to be on top. Okay. To wrap these pieces, we're going to need 2 that are 8 by 10, 1 that's 4 7/8 by 10, and 2 that are 5 by 10. So if you want to get your papers cut and your chipboard cut, these are the measurements you're going to need. So I've done some prep work off camera to make things go a little bit faster. So the 2 pieces that are 6 by 8, you are going to want to put your score tape on the back of both pieces. And then on all of the other pieces, the 2 spine pieces and the top flap, again, cut those out and cover them or put score tape on one side. Okay, so there's 2 different types of wrapping the cover. I'm going to start with the 6 by 8 piece. There's 3 pieces you're going to do just like this. And you'll see that I've already done the other 6 by 8. Okay, so that's what it looks like when it's done. And so let's go ahead and do the other one together. So I already have my 8 by 10 piece cut. You're going to want a 1-inch border. So I have this tool from Country Craft Creations that I use. If you don't have that, you can just use your ruler to measure, or you can make yourself a template of 1-inch chipboard pieces so that you can always have them. But what you're going to do then is you're just going to take the backing off of your chipboard and you're going to lay it down in that corner so that you have a 1-inch border on all 4 sides. And as always, you are going to want to burnish that then so that you have your cardstock on real smooth. So then what I like to do after that is just bring my paper, or excuse me, my chipboard up and then down so that I can get a fold on the paper where it needs to be. And I'll do that on all 4 pieces. You notice I kind of slide it to make sure it's a tight turnover there. And then I'm just taking my burnishing tool and going over the bottom and the 2 end pieces there. Okay, now I am going to take my burnishing tool and just kind of go over around the edge of that chipboard so it's a real nice edge and it'll be nice and smooth. This is the first thing people see, so you want to make sure you put in the time and effort so it turns out nice, and it's easier to work with if you do everything like this. So there's different ways to do your corners. I do mitering at an angle. I don't cut out the squares. So to do that, you want to leave a little bit. You don't want to cut all the way to the corner. You want to leave about 1/8 of an inch. So to make sure that I cut off the right amount, I just have this little tool that I use. Let's see. You don't need this tool. You can just slice at an angle. And so notice it's not all the way to the corner. It is about a 1/8 inch outside of the corner. And we're doing that to all 4. I don't like to waste score tape, so I don't put the 1/4 inch score tape on until I cut off my corners. All right, so I like to put my score tape around the perimeter of the chipboard and along the perimeter of my paper. then we'll do the same thing. Oh, I'm out of 1/4, it looks like. Let me get, have another one handy here. So I will be using art glitter glue also. Which one am I missing? This one. All right, I'm going to go ahead and burnish the score tape. And I do the long sides first, and then I work on opposite sides. I just always have done it that way. It probably doesn't matter if you start on the short side. It's whatever you are used to. All right, so now get your art glitter glue. I have the fine tip on there so that I have a thin line of glue. And I don't want to lose my pin, so okay. So go ahead and put some glue right up against the chipboard so that when we wrap the paper around, the paper's going to stick to the edge and we're going to smooth it out and it's just going to look really sharp. A real smooth edge is nice. Okay, so I'm putting glue up against the chipboard. And I do fill in between the chipboard and the score tape with some glue. And I bring that up and over as tight as I can. And then I'm just going to go ahead and make sure it's laying down nice and flat. And then I'll bring it up on its side. And then you have a nice crisp edge. Let's repeat that. Glue up against the chipboard. And then fill some in between the chipboard and the score tape you have on. Up and over, I usually start in the center and then kind of fan out. Bring it over on its side and burnish. So now the short ends now, that you're going to see there's a little bit of excess here on the corners. So I push the paper down and in so that it covers the corner. And I just use this bone folder for that, down and in, so that when I fold it over, it doesn't stick out. And so that it wraps around that corner so you don't see the chipboard. So down and in. And then you just repeat the same thing. You're just going to go ahead and put glue against the chipboard and then inside. This is called the lay flat method. And then you have a nice angled corner here. And don't forget that edge. One more side. Okay. I think this way is so much faster and easier than gluing all those pieces of paper together, and you have that long old sheet of, oh, that was used to be kind of hard to wrap, I thought. So this is much easier on the hands and to work with the paper. So there are the two 8x10s, or excuse me, the 6x8s, okay? So the other piece that you do the same way is the one that measured 3 by 8. So what it's going to look like, I haven't done the spines yet, but you'll have a book that has a flap cover like this, and then it'll open. So that's where we're headed. So do the 2 6 by 8 pieces and the 3 by 8 just like the one we did together. Now the spine pieces we do a little bit different. This is what it's going to end up looking like. So get your 1 7/8 by 8 and your 2 by 8 piece, and you should have your adhesive on the back. This is the 1 7/8 piece, and this is the 2. So I'm going to do the 1 7/8 with you, and you're going to do the other one just like it. Okay, so you always go 3 inches for the spine that connects the 2 pages. You want to go 3 inches wider than your spine. So if this is 1 3/8, you add 3 to get 4 7/8. And we still want an inch on the top and the bottom. So that's how I got my measurements. Now you do want a 1 1/2 inch side. So I have a 1 1/2 inch template here. And I still want the 1 inch across the top. So these are 2 separate pieces, but she does sell one like this, only it's 1 1/2 on the side and 1 on the top. I still need to get that one. All right, and so we're gonna go ahead and take off the backing and lay it in that corner where the 2 spacers meet. Give it a burnish so it's smooth. Now we still want to train our paper, so we're still going to bring it up and over. Give it a burnish. I'll have you know that this is my first project of summer break. I teach school, and we are now off for the summer. So this is how I like to spend my summer, is crafting, and doing some more crafting. All right, so then again, I'm going to go ahead and take my burnishing tool and just run that up against the chipboard so you have a real defined edge. Just makes it look nice and crisp. Like so. Okay. So we do this one a little bit differently in that we're going to get rid of some of the bulk. We only wrap the bottom and the top. We leave these open. So in the corner, you're going to see 4 rectangles. We're going to cut at a diagonal to cut off a right triangle so that you only have the other part, half of a triangle left. So I'm cutting up to the opposite corner, and I'll do that on both ends. And I still use the score tape on the short ends of the chipboard and on the paper. Like so. Okay, so let's do the first end. And we're going to take off the backing of the tape. And you're going to put glue up against the chipboard. And we're going to go up on the sides about 1/2 inch. And then we're going to fill in the middle with glue, even those little triangles on the corner. You're going to bring that up and over, and then I take my burnishing tool and push that paper up against the chipboard and then go straight out, and you might have some glue come out, and that's totally fine. Okay, so it's nice and smooth. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. give that a chance to dry, but I'm going to go ahead and smooth out my edge. And I'll repeat the process on the opposite side. Okay. Dab of glue. I need to fill my bottle. I got some more. About a 1/2 inch down the 2 sides of the chipboard. Fill in. Bring that up and over. Tuck it in right next to the chipboard and straight out. Up against the chipboard and straight out. All right, so we still need to get rid of some bulk. We want some of this thickness gone. So this is what's going to attach our covers. So I don't want you to be able to see any of this paper if it doesn't line up just perfectly. So we do miter, and it's just a slight angle. So I'm holding my spine horizontally. I'm going to rest my scissors up against the chipboard and just do a slight angle cut on both sides. Not much. And that is how you do the spine pieces. And let me go ahead and just double check that I have a nice, neat, crisp side edge here. Okay, so you have your 1 7/8 by 8 and your 2 by 8. Those are our spine pieces. And our 2 6 by 8s and our 3 by 8. All right, so what I'm going to start with, I want the smaller piece, the 1 7/8 inch piece, is going to be the left-hand spine. So I'm just going to go ahead and burnish it again, just to oopsie. Okay, so get one of your 6 by 8s, and we are going to attach the cover to that wing like so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use again a combination of score tape and the glue. And I always put score tape along the very bottom. In the middle. And close to the chipboard, but I leave about 1/8 of an inch. And I'll do the other side while I'm at it. Actually, we can prep the other one too while we're working on it. Burnish those down. And let's do that to the 2-inch side, or 2-inch spine also. And some people just use glue. I like to use the combination on this part. Okay, there's 1, 2, and finally the 3rd one. Okay, I want to move that one to the side so I don't accidentally put that one on. I want the smaller one that we're working with. Okay, so we're going to remove the backing, and if you have any tape overhanging, you just want to kind of bring your finger up and over so that the tape goes around the paper. Oopsie. So right here I have a little overhang. I'll just bring that over. And I like to do the glue then in between the score tape lines. And then I like to do a thin line on the top of that score tape, so I have some wiggle room if I need it. And I go almost to the chipboard. I leave just about a 1/16 of an inch. Bring it over and burnish that down. Okay, now we're going to attach the other 6x8 piece to the other side. Okay, and give them a glue. And along the top here, right on top of the score tape. And leave about a 1/16 inch gap. Push down, bring it over, and burnish it down. Okay, now if you were just doing a regular cover, you'd be done. That's your cover. We, on the other hand, are going to add now the 2-inch piece to this side. So it will be like this, okay? And right now it doesn't matter because we don't have any pattern paper. So it's, you can even put it on this side and it's still gonna work out. You just gotta be conscious when you put your top flap on that you're putting it on with the larger spine on the right. And it's only an 1/8 of an inch larger. Some people go 1/4 of an inch difference on their spine pieces. And I'm filling in the glue. And along that top. Go right up against about a 1/16 of an inch, almost exactly to the chipboard. Again, it still doesn't matter until now with the attaching of the top piece. So one more attachment. Getting kind of long here. And a 1/16 of an inch, almost right up on top of that chipboard. So you can see this is wider, that's the right hand side, and this will come over like so. All right, so now we need to reinforce the inside by placing paper to cover our 2 spine pieces. And so I haven't cut mine yet, so I'll do that, but let me give you the measurements. If our book is 8 inches high, we want the height of our paper to be about 7 7/8. And when we put the paper over, we want it to cover these wings so that it is a little bit more smooth. So cut a piece that is, let's go 5.5 by 7 7/8. And you're gonna need 2 of those, 5.5 by 7/8. So do 2 of those. Let me, this wouldn't be 5.5. Nope, of course not. Okay, so 7 7/8 inches long. And 5.5 wide. And then we'll just cover it like so. Now, I use score tape on the back of this paper so that it lays down smooth. You can use glue. I sometimes worry that it ripples. You could put score tape on here and then put glue on the outside edge. It's whatever. I just think that the score tape makes it stay down nicer and smoother. Okay, so you're going to do one there, and then I need to cut another one. I'm using the white artisan cardstock, so 5.5 wide. And 7 7/8 tall. And then we'll put score tape on this side and we'll lay that down to cover those 2 wings. And then that's all we have to do for the cover for right now. We are getting ready to do the front left-hand side of the book, but before I do that, I do want to show you that I added 3 larger size magnets on the 3-inch piece, and then its corresponding magnet is on the left-hand side so that we have a closure. I've also given myself little reminders so that I don't forget. I need ribbon because I'm going to have a waterfall here and I want it to be a ribbon closure. So if I don't write that down, I will forget to put that on there. And you'll see that I've done that in a couple other spots too. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the measurements of the papers you're going to need for the left-hand flap, the first one we're going to do. So you'll notice I have the word ribbon here because I want this to tie closed so it doesn't flap around. You'll need 1 piece. I hope you can see that I wrote light because I don't like the indentation, but 6 5/8 by 8. You'll need one that is 3.5 by 9, and that will be a belly band that has a pocket. And so the pocket piece is 4.5 by 5. And then if we turn this page to the side here, on the back, we're going to have a double pocket that I'm going to use my punch board to give it some a different shape. So you'll need 2 pieces. One measures 6 3/4 by 4.5, and the other one is 6 3/4 by 2.5. So as you're watching this video, it'll probably be more handy for you if you have like a notebook nearby that you can jot down these measurements. If I were a better typist, I would type them in the description box, but it takes me way too long. So I'll just let you go ahead and write down these measurements. Okay, so then on the, there's going to be another flap on the, that's going to be underneath, and it will open to the other side. That piece is 5 1/4 by 8. And again, I wrote ribbon here so that I remember to put a piece of ribbon, so that will close with, let me show you. So it'll be like this. And so if I have the ribbon here and here, I can tie that closed so it doesn't flap around. And you'll need 2 pieces that are 3 5/8 by 3 7/8. Underneath these 2 flaps, we'll have a waterfall. And so you will need 6 pieces that are 5 7/8 by 4 3/4. So because I have these in my hand already, let's go ahead and start with these waterfall pieces. So to score these, you're only going to make one score mark. So you'll place the 4 3/4 inches across the top, and we want our pages, our flip-flops to be 4 1/4 long. So I'll just go ahead and score that at 4 1/4. And so now you have to do that on all 6 pieces, and that's all you do for the waterfall. So go ahead and grab your 6 5/8 inch piece that measures 6 5/8 by 8. Place your 6 5/8 inches across the top of your scoreboard. You're going to make 2 score marks. One is at 1/2 and one is at 3/4, so that we have a little bit of a gusset. The 3 1/2 by 9 piece, this is going to be a belly band, so you're going to place the 9 inches across the top, and you'll score at 1/2 and at 8 1/2. The 4 1/2 by 5 is the pocket that's going to go on top of that belly band. So place your 4 1/2 inches across the top, score at 1/2, score at 4, rotate it 1 time, and score at 1/2. So pockets get 3 score marks. On the back side, the 6 3/4 by 2 1/2, we're going to make 2 score marks. We're going to score it at 1/2, and we're going to score it at 6 1/4. The 6 3/4 by 4 1/2, we're going to make that do 3 score marks. So with the 6 3/4 inches across the top, score at 1/2, score at 6 1/4, rotate it 1 time so that your 4 1/2 inches is across the top, and give it a score at 1/2. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish our scoring. There's not that much left. So this is your 5 1/4 by 8 inch piece, and you're going to score at 1/2 and at 5/8, so that you have a 1/8 inch gusset. Now you're going to have those on the right hand side, but you can still score it on the left here. But as you put paper on, just remember this is going to go on the be attached on the right hand side. And the 3 5/8 by 3 7/8, you want the 3 5/8 inches across the top, and we're going to score it at 1/2. And do that to both pieces. Okay, so let's prep these by doing our burnishing and our cutting that's needed. So the 3 5/8 by 3 7/8, I'm going to go ahead and miter. And miter. Take your 5 1/4 by 8 inch piece, and you're going to miter just the 1/2 inch, so don't go into that 1/8 gusset. That's hard for me to see this one. I don't want to cut it wrong. Okay. Much better, I can see it. It's more defined now. Okay. You do no mitering on the waterfall, so just keep those at 1/2 and don't do any cutting. The 6 3/4 by 2 1/2, we're going to do something different on this, so I'm going to save that. But we can cut the 6 3/4 by 4 1/2 inch piece. We're going to cut off the squares at the bottom at an angle. Okay. And that is, I'm going to do just a super slight miter here, just super slight on the 1/2 inches, like barely. Okay. Clean up my little tab mess here. Okay, we still have a little bit left. The 4.5 by 5 piece, cut out the squares at the corner at an angle, snip, snip, and angle cut the top on the 1/2 inch. Three 3.5 by 9. We don't have to do any mitering. You can if you want, but this is not going to go from end to end on the book, so it's okay. But if you're in the habit of mitering and you just like the consistency of doing that, then go ahead. And the 6 5/8 by 8, just miter on the 1/2 inch. Now, one thing I want to tell you, when I have a large flap like this, and I know it's going to get a lot of turning and whatever, I use the 100-pound white. Everything else I use the regular artisan, but on big flaps such as this one, I would use 100-pound. You don't have to though, because once you put your paper on, it does get a lot stronger. But if you have it handy, I think it's just a good alternative. So now we can do our burnishing. And so you just make sure it's a nice crisp burnish so that everything will lay nice and neat. And you can see that we have a 1/4 inch gusset here. Then this will be the belly band. And what's going to happen is that will go here on the top. Then we have the 4.5 by 5, and I want this to kind of look like a firework, so the insert that I put in here will be cut. I'll put a triangular shape on there so it kind of looks fireworkish, if that's a word. And then this pocket would go here. Okay, and then we flip it over. Let's go ahead and burnish the first pocket. This is the 6 3/4 by 4.5. And I am going to be using my envelope punch board. So on this one that is 2.5, we're going to measure down and do a score mark so that we can see where we want to cut this. With the 2.5 inches across the top, I'm going to score, let's do it at 3/4. Let's do it at 1. So I'm just going to put a score mark on that 1/2 inch piece. And then over here, and now over here, we're going to do it at 1.5 because it's facing a different direction now. Okay, so you can see I went basically 1.5 inches down, and I have a 1 inch piece at the bottom, and we are going to cut on that line until it gets to the score mark, and then we're going to angle cut down like that. And we'll do that on the other side also. Cut it up to the 1/2 inch mark and angle cut. Take it off. I don't have this one as neat. There we go. And that one we'll be using the envelope punch board on also. Okay, now I have 2 flaps, the 3 5/8 by 3 7/8, just scoring those, burnishing those. So one of these will be on the left and one will be on the right. So ignore my writing, one's upside down, but we'll have one on the left, one on the right. So there'll be a 1/2 inch on each side. So it's always challenging to score, I think, when there's just a 1/8 inch gusset. So you have to be careful. Like, I am really bad at it, but I just kind of bend, try and find that score mark, and I do it with my hands first, and then I go through with my burnishing tool. So you can see there's a 1/8 inch gusset there. And I'm just going to go through real quick and burnish the 1/2 inch on all of the waterfall pieces. We don't miter these, remember. Because they line up, it keeps everything in line as you're attaching each of the flaps. And you don't want any space. You want it to be a solid rectangle. All right. So let's get the punch board. And find your 6 3/4 by 4 1/2, and I do have I'm going to keep it the 1/2 inches are closed or folded up. I'm going to place this on my punch board, and I'm going to go to 1 1/2. No, I'll go to 1 1/4, and then I'll punch. And then I'll flip it over, and I'm going to go to 1 1/4 and punch. And then we're going to slice that off in the center. So we'll do the same thing here. I didn't burnish my side tab, so let me do that real quick. And it's 1 1/4 again on each side. Oh, I just did 1 1/2. Okay, we're going to do 1 1/2 on this one. That's okay. It gives it a little interest. How about that? Okay, let's get our blade, and we're going to slice off the piece in between the two. So I just line up my ruler, and I'm just going to slice that right off. So it looks like so. And let's do the next one. That look about even. There we go. There we go. And so this will be sliding into this piece, and we'll have a double pocket. I need to file this. It looks kind of rough to me. Let's see, does this one? A little bit in the corner. Okay. All right, we can start doing I'm going to start with the 5 1/4 piece because it's the easiest, and I'm going to be attaching one of the flaps on the upper left side and one on the bottom right hand side. And you'll notice I have the word ribbon here, so I got to pick out the ribbon I want for the closure. I don't want it to be too bulky, so I'm going to use this thin blue. And I'm going to cut it at 8 inches to start. And I'll need 2 of those, so I might as well measure out another 8-inch piece. And we're going to attach it to the top here, not on the 1/8 inch gusset, but right here on top. So I'm just going to put a little dab of glue, and then I'm going to also put, oh, I probably shouldn't measure this. I want to do it right in the middle. Turn this sideways and find my 4-inch mark. And we're going to actually glue it right here like this. And 4 inches, okay. Come on, glue. I don't need much. And actually I'm going to turn it this way because it's got a natural curve and it wants to go that way. And then I am going to get a piece of score tape and just put right on top of there so it doesn't go anywhere. Like so. Okay, so now I won't forget that's done. And now I'm going to attach my 2 flaps. Now you can corner around those if you want. I'm going to leave them squared off. Or you can put some sort of decorative corner on there. So I'm going to turn this on the opposite direction. It's just easier for me to see. All the way lined up with the side here and the top. And again, we don't want to glue on that 1/8 inch gusset. We're going to glue the next one. Line it up with the bottom. And this here side, I'm going to push that down, that 1/8 inch gusset. Okay, well, I got it on the tape, but that'll be all right. Okay, now when this flap turns, this will just be a place for like a 5x7. Okay, so we'll be putting pattern paper on and white paper to make it look more like a scrapbook page, actually. Trying to decide if I do this, it should be okay because it'll be under a flap, so I'm not going to put any magnets on there, but you're going to want to just make sure that you really burnish it so that they want to stay closed more. That 1/8 gusset is so tiny. Okay, so that's done. Let's take our 6 5/8 inch piece and attach the ribbon. And I want to line it up with this one. So I'm just going to place one on top of the other so that I can line up where I want that ribbon to be. Like so. And I'm going to get a piece of score tape to lay on top of it. Okay. All right, here we go. Let's place our pocket on top of our belly band. So the 3.5 by 9 and the 4.5 by 5. I'm just going to place that pocket down at the bottom. Oop, I always go on the front a little bit. Pinch in those 2 sides all the way to the bottom. Look side to side. Okay, we want to center this. You can be an eyeball person and just kind of eye it, or you can actually find the center. So I think I want to find the center. So I'm going to get my Tim Holtz ruler, and I want to see. It's about, let's see, 2 3/4, nope. About 2 7/8. So I'm just going to put a little tick mark here. So I know that I want to line up the center of this 3-inch piece. Maybe I better mark it at 1.5 so that everything lines up right. So 1. There we go. So then I'll line up the 2 tick marks. Okay, so I just do one side at a time. So I'm going to do the bottom first. All the way to the bottom. Now, it might be easier if you put your pad, no, you don't want to do that because I don't want to see that little white tab. Never mind. And now we'll just place glue on the top and lay it down. And I do have a little bit of pencil mark, so I'm going to get rid of that. Okay. So on the back here is where we're going to place the 2 pockets, and I want to line it up with the outside of the page so that it doesn't get in the way of this gusset. So let's go ahead and put glue on our 1/2-inch pieces. And I kind of open that up a little bit. Okay, pinch in those 2 sides, line it up on the left-hand side and the bottom. So that does not get in the way of the gusset. And now this piece will just slide in until it stops. Because of the way we cut it, it should line up just like so. I'm going to readjust this fork. It doesn't look like it's... Doesn't look like I scored it quite even. Let's see if that made a difference. There we go. Okay, glue that down, just the 2 sides. Do not glue anything on the bottom. Slide it in. And it should stop in just the right spot. Give it a burnish. All right, so what's going to happen is we're going to attach this to our book, and it will tie closed so that it doesn't flap around. We'll open it. There'll be a double pocket. We'll have the little flappy doos. This will be a little scrapbook page, and then underneath is going to be the waterfall. So I need to look before I do anything to see if... I'm going to do one on the bottom and on the top. And then I'm going to keep so that they open up and down like so. So before I attach these to my book, I think I'm going to go ahead and put my pattern paper on just so it's a little bit easier. So I will put on the pattern paper and then we'll attach everything to our book. Okay, now that I did some matting of the papers, I'm going to go ahead and start attaching things. So remember I had written ribbon on the top and the bottom of the left-hand side. And I cut it at about 13 inches and scrunched it. And I just glued it and then put a little bit of tape on it. So the first thing we're going to do is attach the piece that has the 1/4 inch gusset. This is how I decorated it. I wanted that to kind of look like a firecracker. And so we're going to go ahead and glue this one all the way to the left-hand side, like so. So I'm going to turn the book this direction just so it's easier for me to... And this is how I did the back. I haven't made any cards or any inserts yet, but let's go ahead and attach that 1/2 inch piece to the book. So I'm putting glue on the 1/2 inch, not the gusset. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and line it up bottom to top and all the way to the edge. Maybe. Okay, and then I'm going to lift that up and just make sure that it's down real good. Okay. So there's one side, and now we're going to take the other one, and this is how I did that one. These are just little mats for like a 2x3 picture. And there, I have to still decorate this side. So we'll open this up, and we don't want to go over the spine. So we're going to go about a 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch away from the spine piece. And we'll line it up top and bottom. Now we have to make sure though that when we put this on, our waterfall is going to fit in between the two. Okay, and it should be just right. Okay, so let's go ahead and glue this on. Just putting glue on the 1/2 inch, not the 1/8. Okay, again, I'm going to turn it sideways. Make sure it's going the right direction here. And I'm going to line it up close to the spine, but not right on the spine. Now I got to turn it before I push it down. Make sure it's lined up okay. And I think that's going to work. And just go ahead and burnish that on. So that has a 1/8 inch gusset. So that's this side. So when you open it, it'll look like this. Like I said, I still have to decorate this side, and this is where our waterfall is going to be, and I'm going to have the waterfall centered between the two. It's going to be close, and I'm going to do some on the top. I'm going to do 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom. So I'll do 3 here. And then I'll start at the bottom and do 3, and then we'll close them every other one. Okay, so let me start with the bottom, and this is the one. And again, just make sure you're putting it between the 2 pages without it getting in the way of closing. So place glue on your 1/2 inch piece. And I'm going to take off this backing of the tape. Okay, and I'm going to go down to the bottom. Make sure it lines up okay. Open it up and just make sure you give it a burnish. So we're going to keep lining up those. Double check. Perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and do the next one on the bottom, and you bump it up right up against, I need to trim that, right up against that 1/2 inch we just laid down. Just got to make sure I glue on top of that. So let's go ahead, put your glue on. Bump it up right up against there. Make sure it fits side by side here so that you can still close. Open it up. And then we have one more. And that will be right here. Okay. And then I'm going to go back in and put a piece of red on that 1/2 inch so you don't see the white on this strip here. Bump it right up against there. Check side by side. Okay, so now I'm going to turn the book upside down. And the first one I'm going to do is the top one. So it's the one that has the cut apart. Okay. So take off the backing of that tape for your ribbon. I'm going to open up those. And 1/2 inch. All the way to the top, in between those two. Make sure it lines up okay. And then open it up and burnish. Try and trim some of that off there. Okay, so the next one is stars. And I might go back and put pattern paper on the back. I'm going to see how bulky it is when I close the book before I decide. Because if there's going to be pictures, I don't want it to be too thick that it's going to be hard to cover or to close. Okay. And then we'll be putting a piece of pattern paper in here. Last one. Bump it right up against there. Okay, dokie. So now let's see how it looks when it closes. And again, we'll put pattern paper here. I didn't want to waste and put it on the bottom. Okay. So we would close bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, top. And then we would tie it closed right here at the bottom. Okay, and then this will close here and like so. All right. Oops, might want that there. And it's going to be, yeah, I don't want to put any, I'm not going to put any paper. This is kind of thick. So I'm not going to put any paper on the backs. I'll just leave them white. But I am going to go back and put a red strip on all of those 1/2 inch pieces like so. Okay, and now we're ready to start on the right hand side. Okay, let's move on to the next part. Let me move this off to the side here. I got some things ready. So this is the right hand side. Okay, and I matted it with some of that glitter paper first and then some of the pattern paper, because we're going to put an accordion pocket on here and it's not going to be the full width. So I wanted to make sure that I had some background paper on here first. Okay, and then these I just cut 7 7/8 inches tall. The one that was 2, I actually cut it at 2 because when we covered it, it actually got a little bit wider. So this one was 1 7/8 wide. This was 2 inches wide. Was this one 3 or 2 7/8? That one was about 2 7/8, but they're all 7 7/8 inches tall. So for this part, I am going to use the 100-pound white paper from Country Craft Creations. And let me give you some measurements here. I don't know if you can read this, but it's kind of messy. I made a mistake. So you're going to need one that is 5 1/4 by 10 and one that is 5 1/4 by 6. Okay. You're going to want 2 pieces. This is white 100-pound. Now, when you see these 2 numbers, that's how I write it in my notes, that I'm going to put the 10 inches across the top of the scoreboard, and I'm going to score at 5 and 6. So that's how I write it when I'm taking notes. So then this 5 1/4 by 6 piece, because I have the numbers coming off the 6, I'm going to have the 6 inches across the top, and I'm going to score at 2 and 3, just in case you were wondering what those numbers are. You're going to want, I put some chipboard in my accordion folder pocket so that they're sturdy and they're not floppy. And so you're going to want 2 pieces that are 7/8 by 5 1/8. And then to cover those, we'll need 2 pieces that are 6 3/4 by 2. Okay, and then your pattern paper, we're going to use that for the pockets. We're not going to do both white and pattern. We'll just do the pattern paper. And I went ahead and did 4 pockets, so 4 of them at 6 by 9 1/2. Now be careful with your pattern. You want, if it's directional, you want to make sure that you're folding it in a way that will have the direction facing upright. Okay, so let's get started on the scoring. I've already scored it, but I'll do it with you also. So let's start with the 5 1/4 by 10. And again, put your 10 inches across the top, and you're going to make 2 score marks. This is backwards. You're going to score it at 5 and at 6. Okay, that was the 10 inches across, 5 and 6. So we have a 1-inch gusset. And then the next one that is 5 1/4 by 6, you're going to score it at 2 and at 3 with the 6 inches across the top. And it's going to be as easy as that. Okay. While we're at it, the pattern paper, this could be an issue. Let's see. Yeah, I was going to use this one, but the direction, you know what, if I use it in the front piece, you won't notice. Okay, so this will be my first pocket. So you're not going to see this because it's going to be glued up against, well, maybe you will see a little bit. Oops, sorry. What do I want? I think I'll have to cut another one. Let's see if I can find, is this 6? Nope. Oh, it has to be something that the direction, I wanted red, but let's see. That's directional. What about this one? This one will work. Okay, so let me get this cut. I'll need 4 of the pattern paper at 6 by 9 1/2. So let me cut this real quick. And these are the pockets that we're going to be making. So you can see why the direction is important. So I'm telling you to watch pattern, and then I went ahead and made the mistake myself. Okay, let's see. How do I want to do this? So all of your pattern paper, we're going to score it the same way. So let's go ahead and do the scoring of your pattern paper. You're going to place the 6 inches across the top, and we're going to do 2 score marks. We're going to do one at 1/2, and then we're going to do one at 5 1/2. You'll turn it 1 time so that you've got the long 9 1/2 across the top, and you're going to score it 4 3/4. Okay, do that to all of your pattern paper. Because I have my pattern paper in my hand, I'll go ahead and get started. We're going to cut off the 2 1/2-inch pieces on the side, but only on one side of the 4 3/4. So at my halfway mark, I'm going to take a strip off on each of the sides here, and I'm going to cut to the outside of that little bump so that we don't see it. So I go to the score line that was at 4 3/4, and I'm going to angle cut it off like so. I'm going to angle cut the top, and then I'll do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to angle cut the top piece so that there's a tab, and it's hard to see my score marks on this one. Let's see. I'm going to cut to the inside so we don't have that ridge. Go to the score, and then angle cut that off. So that's what you'll have on all 4 of your pieces. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and burnish my score marks. Let's see, I think I want it this direction. And let's fold in the sides. And then we'll just put glue on the 1/2-inch tabs, and we'll close it. Make sure you've cut it so you don't see any of the back paper coming out the side. Mine looks okay. So this is going to be our quick accordion sections. I've done albums like this before. I really like the accordion. You can fit a lot of pictures in there. Okay, and I'm just going to close that. Now I do want a thumb hole, so I've already done one, so I'm going to put that one next to it, and I'm going to line it up so I get the thumb hole at the same spot. And there we go. Okay, so now I have my 4 pieces, my 4 pockets. Okay, so I'm going to set those off to the side for right now. Now let's get to the actual box. So I've already done my scoring on these, and I've done my burnishing. So this is just going to be a real easy pocket to hold them. We're going to end up gluing the smaller piece to the back of the larger, and it's going to look like so. Now I don't want this to be floppy, so I am going to, that's where the chipboard comes in. So I want to wrap 2 pieces of chipboard so that I can use that on that 1-inch gusset so that it makes it stronger and it won't buckle, like it won't fall in, if that makes sense. Okay, so I like to do that when it's just paper. So I'm going to grab my paper, and it doesn't matter if you get it 100% centered because you're not going to see the bottom. Now you can use tape or you can use glue. I'm going to just use my score tape real quick. And do a 4th too because it doesn't go all the way to the edge. Okay. Get that out of the way. All All right, so let's go ahead and wrap this. Again, it's just for stability. We will put pattern paper on it though too. Okay. And just kind of eyeball it. You don't need 1 inch top and bottom. We only needed like 3/4, if even that. So that's close. That'll work. And then we wrap it just like regular covers. So we're going to go ahead and fold the paper over the chipboard and burnish it on all 4 sides. Like so. Okay, so now I need to take out those squares, but I'm going to do it at an angle. And I'm not going to go all the way to the corner of the chipboard. I'm going to leave about 1/8 of an inch of paper. I'm just going to notch that off. Don't need that much. Let's see. That was weird. Okay. And I'm just going to use glue now. I usually use score tape, but for this small of a piece, I'm just going to use the glue. So I'm going to put glue up against the chipboard on the long side, and I'll fill it in on the paper also. And I'm just going to bring that up and over. Get it to lay down. And I always like to do the edge. Do the opposite side. Fill in the white paper with glue. Bring it up and over. All right, so I need to do a little bit of a tuck here so that the paper goes around that corner of the chipboard. Ooh, that one was close. I'm just tucking down and in around the corner. Let's put glue on. And bring it over. And it's okay that you see chipboard. That's going to be glued to the bottom of our little pocket, so that's okay. Do the edge. The last one. Give it a good burnish. Make sure it's staying down. So what I'm going to do then is in this 1 inch, I'm going to lay this, I'm going to glue that in. But I do want to put pattern paper on it. So I'm going to go ahead and glue. I went ahead and did 7/8 by 5 1/8, which was the length of the board. So I did it pretty much the same exact size. And you don't even have to put paper on this if you don't want to. You don't even have to do the chipboard if you don't want to. You can just leave it with just paper. Okay, and then I'll do this one. And it doesn't have to be 100% perfect because it's probably not even going to be seen much. All right. So we're going to attach the smaller piece, the one that was 6 inches long, we're going to take that 2-inch and we're going to glue it to the back of the long piece. Okay, so I'm going to put glue on the 2-inch section. All right. And then I'm just going to bump it up against, make sure it's not showing on the sides. You can still be bent over without getting in the way of that score. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I went 1/8 of an inch smaller on my pattern paper. Oh, I still got to cut out paper for that part. But I'm going to put this on so that I can attach my folders. Let's see, do I have that the right direction? Yeah. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to put in my chipboard pieces. So be generous with the glue so it stays. Not that I think it's going to go anywhere, but it's heavier material, so. Okay. And let me put one here. Now you might want to fold up to make sure it's in the right spot. It doesn't get in the way of the bend. Okay, I'm turning around, do the other one. Okay. Bring that up and over to make sure it's not in the way. Okay. Give it a burnish so it stays where it's supposed to. Now, I'm not going to put any pattern paper here because there's going to be an envelope there and you won't even really see it. And you don't need to put any on the back because that's going to be glued to our book. Okay. Now, on the front, I did do 2 layers just to give it some heavy-duty thickness. So I did the glitter paper and then the pattern paper. That goes here. I just love that glitter paper. Just adds so much, even though you don't see a whole lot of it. It adds a lot to your project, I think. And we're just going to have a ribbon closure. So I'm going to put this here. Looks good. It's probably easiest to put your paper on before you get it too much done. I should probably put paper on this one too while I'm, let's see, do I want glitter? Well, I'll go back and do that. Let me go ahead and show you how we're going to do, let's do the paper on the outside inches. So this is 7/8 by 5 1/8. And I'm going to do it on the top one and the bottom one. Looks good. Now on And I'm going to go ahead and get my ribbon ready so that I don't forget to put it on, because that would not be good. And I do want to crinkle it with water. See, that's going to just hold its shape so much better. So I don't know, I don't think I need this much, but I've got this much, so I'll just get it all wet, and I'm going to crinkle it in my hands. I like that look better than the nice, neat. And then I'll just let it dry while we're getting ready. So I'll set that there. I really should probably put the paper on here. Actually, it probably won't make any difference. I'll be able to, oh, it'll be fine. Okay, so decide on the order that you want your envelopes. I'm trying to decide if that's okay. Yeah, I think it's fine. That works for me. Okay, so we don't want to put glue on the whole entire thing. We want the envelopes to be flexible. So I'm just going to put some score tape on the back. And let's see. I'm just going to kind of put a couple pieces on near the center, but not all the way to the top and not all the way to the bottom. So I just have 3 strips kind of in the center. And let's start with this one in the back. And I'm going to put it pretty much to the bottom, but not all the way. I want to center it side to side. Make sure it's not going over the top. And then I'm going to burnish that down. Okay, so there's our first pocket. So because we didn't glue it all the way down, it's got some flexibility and can open a little bit better. So the next one is going to go right on top of it. So you can either put your tape on the back of this one or on the front of this one, doesn't matter. It's easier to see the tape on this one if you didn't know how I was taping it on the other one. And I want to line it up with the other one before I push down. That looks about right. And the next one is this one. Burnish that tape so that when you pull it off, it's going to leave the adhesive where it's supposed to be. Okay. And our last one's going to go on top of that one. Trying to do this fast, but I always have a hard time with the new roll of score tape. It's hard to hold on to, I think. It's kind of an obnoxious shape. Some people put their hands on the inside. That doesn't work for me. Feels weird. are going to attach this to the front cover. And then we'll be able to store a bunch of pictures in here. So I'm just gonna look at that, make sure before I push down I'm happy with where it's located. And so we're going to see how we have a nice accordion. I want to attach the first one to the front so that it will accordion like so. So this one I'm just going to put 2 strips in the center. I'm not going to go all the way to the top or all the way to the bottom so that it's still flexible. Okay, I lied. I'm going to do 3 on this one too. I'm just putting them in a different direction. And then I'll put the pattern paper on the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this at the right 1-inch depth there. I just have my hand inside that pocket, rubbing that so that it sticks to the front cover, like so. Okay, now let's put our ribbon on so we don't forget. I know this is too big, but I'm just gonna put on, do I want score tape? Yeah, why not? Excuse me. You can eyeball it like I am, or you can actually measure to find the center. That's gonna be close enough for me. Center of my, all right, and then I still have to put the pattern paper on, but I want to adjust these. I do like to tie them in a knot so that they don't unravel. Or fray, whatever they're called, whatever that's called. All right, we're cooking. The last thing you're gonna do before you decorate your cover is to attach this to our book. And you can decide where you want to place it. I want to probably put mine near the bottom, but not all the way to the bottom. And you need to make sure that you are centering it like so. And then when you have things inside of here, it will accordion a little bit and it'll just be a little bit more sturdy also. So you're just gonna glue that here. If you want, you can put it in the center. I'll have to just, I don't know which way I'm gonna do it. I might like it better in the center actually. Okay. And then all you have to do is put your pattern paper on, and I'll come back and show you how I am going to decorate my cover.